Good morning, folks. Good morning, Tennessee Department, American Legion. I am so grateful to see you guys here to join the dumpster fire response team. I don't know if you know this, but some of you have been to a few goat rodeos. Some of you have been to a couple of dumpster fires. Some of you have actually seen people whose hair is on fire while they're busy trying to get through a meeting. And you, my brave volunteers, have joined the cadre of tortured souls who are actually going to know how to keep a dumpster fire from becoming a complete toxic waste dump. Because the number one thing that happens in posts is good ideas and great intentions meet up with unqualified responses and reckless confidence to turn into massive legal liabilities. And if you doubt me, if you don't believe me, you can just ask our good friends out in Chattanooga, because this past year, we all got to enjoy the raging dumpster fire that was created by a group of folks running a post that has been doing good work in the community for a long, long time, and their good intentions combined with poor planning and worse execution to turn into a big, wet hole in their financial accounting. It sucks. It sucks completely. I hate it for you. I hate it with you. And if you get into it, I will hate it together as we work our way through it. It is not my job to tell you that I have all the answers, because I surely don't. And it is not my place to pretend to tell you what you've done in the past is wrong, because I wasn't there and I don't know the pressures you were facing at the moment when you made the decision that you made. Here is my assumption, and it was the same assumption I had when I was a judge advocate in the Navy. I assume that every person I encounter who wears this hat, who wears this uniform, does so because they really care about making our country a better place. They might not know how to do it, but they really care. And a lot of times when we're dealing with conflicts in our American Legion posts, we can forget that the thing that caused this person to first volunteer to write a blank check to the country, Commander-in-Chief unknown, right? How many of us had the privilege of serving under a Commander-in-Chief we did not personally vote for? Right? It didn't matter. You still did the order. You still did the mission. The same is true in the American Legion. Every person who has ever joined the American Legion did so because they believed in what the organization stands for. They may not always agree with whoever's in charge of the post, the project, the department, the nation. They may not. They may not agree with all the things that the American Legion does, but they said, I'm going to use some of my time as a veteran to try to make my country a better place to live. So I start with that assumption in everything I do as your judge advocate. And I want to encourage you, as part of the dumpster fire response team, to have that attitude about everything you do for your posts. Because I cannot prevent problems from happening, but I can hopefully encourage you to maintain the kind of attitude that'll make it possible to survive the dumpster fire, close the lid, and get back to doing the business of your post. So, what are you here for today? Hopefully, you're here because you know that we're going to be talking about the post as an employer. A lot of our posts have employees. Some of our posts used to have employees, and our post members are lobbying hard to get back into the business of having employees. My post is Dixon. Dixon used to have a couple of buildings and a lot of stuff. We stopped doing that a while ago, and a number of our members regularly want us to get back into the business of having a bar, canteen, place to hang out, and with that comes employees. So it's really important in my post that before we take that headache on, that we understand what it means. How many folks in the room are part of a post that have employees right now? Okay, about half. Okay. So the other half of you are here because you're trying to gather intel to figure out what would happen if my post were to gather employees, or because you are a liaison and you occasionally have to talk to posts that have employees, right? Okay, good. I hate to be standing in front of a room talking to people who could care less about what I'm talking about. And sometimes I get to talk about fun stuff, and sometimes I just have to talk about work. This is a work session. And this is a work session because over the past year, I've had 8 posts in Tennessee, 8, have employer-employee legal problems. And I want to make sure that as much as I can, I get the word out that there are solutions to these problems. And the number one solution to this problem is prevention. Prevention. Before anything catches on fire, if you know where the fire extinguisher is, you're in a better position. Before anything catches on fire, if you separate things that are flammable, you're in a better position. Before the fire starts, if you know what the fire triangle is, anyone else in the former Navy? Because every sailor is a damage controlman, right? Yeah. So the fire triangle was burned into my head, even though I was only ever a JAG Corps lawyer. Like, if we have a fire, if I'm in charge of putting out the fire, we got problems. But I know fuel, oxygen, heat. I know this. It's going to go to my grave with me, just like how a Marine knows which part of the crayon to eat first. Okay. There are, just so you know, my favorite branch of service, like I served in the Navy, but truly my favorite branch of service is the Marine Corps. And it's the Marine Corps not because of the uniforms, not because of the jokes, not because they're tough. It's because when we were doing amphibious qualifications in San Diego, we would get out in these AAVs that were 20 years out of their intended service life, that had been handed down from the Army. And we get out in the water and the things would break down, and the Marines on board would say, don't worry about it, LT, this happens about 35% of the time. Another one will drag along and tow us in, and it'll be fine. And I'm like, are you okay with going into combat with this? And they're like, I'd be excited to go into combat. I don't care if the machine works. I know I work. And anybody who has that kind of, it doesn't matter what we face, we're going to get through it attitude, that earns my respect. And so that's why I'm a big fan of the Marines. So if I make jokes about the Marines, understand it's truly, as the redheaded stepbrother, place of love for the Marine Corps. If you want to follow along, we've printed out the flyers. I'm too poor to do it in color, so my own set is in black and white. But Mike Griffin, our adjutant, got the department a fancy new copier, and so you've got it in color back on that chair back there. The first thing to know is who I am and what my role is. I'm a department officer. That doesn't mean I know anything about anything in your post. Your post is the expert on your post. And I need you guys to always understand that. When people call me and ask me a question, the first thing I'm going to do is ask you like 5 more questions. Because I need to know what your situation is before I could ever give you anything close to competent advice. To that end, if you don't have a lawyer who's on your executive committee, I would encourage you to have your executive committee make one of your tasks to look around your town and at least find a lawyer who's willing to take a phone call from you. Not because you need to have a judge advocate at every post. You don't. Most posts don't have enough issues that they need a judge advocate on their executive team. But you're going to need to know one, because at some point over the course of every 5 years or so, something's going to come up, and it's going to be a lot better if you have somebody to run it through who's local. If you can't get that person, then you call me. And if you call me, you understand that you're talking to a guy who isn't part of your town, doesn't know the politics of your issue, doesn't know what you're trying to accomplish. And so I'm going to ask a lot of questions, and my opinion may not be the one you want to follow. That's your privilege. As an attorney, I don't make decisions. I give opinions and advice. It's your responsibility to make decisions. When you were sworn in as a post officer, one of the things they tell the commander is you have the responsibility to guide this post. That's a serious responsibility. My responsibility, it's comical, right? I have to be present, I have to listen, I have to pay attention. I have to give you best impartial advice that I can. But I'm not the one who's making the decisions, that's you. Second thing is, I hope that what you'll benefit from being here is that you'll learn from the experience of our other posts. Nothing you're doing in your town, in your post, is unique, is new to you, is the only person who's ever confronted it. Your district has a commander. That commander does not have any command authority. I personally wish we would retitle the position into district liaison or something, because when you say district commander, it implies there's a chain of command, and the higher than the post commander is the district commander, and then the regional commander, and then the department commander. No. Everything at the departmental level just exists to move information around the department, to encourage. We're your cheerleaders. We're your messengers. We're not your boss. At your post executive committee is the boss, period. The only time that changes is if you're trying to do something that's contrary to the Constitution and bylaws of your post, in which case the members get to say, hey, Post Executive Committee, this is wrong. Or if you're doing something contrary to the national constitution or the department constitution, in which case someone at some level might have to say this post is not acting like an American Legion post. But other than that, like, do you meet on Tuesday or Thursday? Do you meet in a bar or at a church? Do you do breakfast, lunch, dinner? Do you eat together? Do you not eat together? Do you wear the caps? Do you wear t-shirts? Do you have to wear pants? It's up to you. And so I want to encourage you guys to own that and really take that seriously, because that responsibility ends up having an impact for you. So when you have employees, the number one reason why every business, and that includes the Legion Post, has employees is they have an employee to solve a problem. There's something you guys need to do as a post that you can't do with volunteers alone. For a lot of you that run a restaurant or a canteen, that's the food service, the bar service. A lot of other folks, it's the maintenance of the hall, it's cleaning up in the building, that sort of thing. For some posts that are particularly large, it's the public affairs mission. It's keeping up the website. It's making sure we get out the media correctly. But whatever it is, that problem that you're solving with an employee does not come as a one-off. There are always trade-offs to every solution. There is no free lunch. If I go from a volunteer to a paid employee, I take on a massive amount of compliance responsibility for the state of Tennessee. I immediately become subject to a whole bracket of laws and rules that aren't true with a volunteer. In Dixon, we raise our money by parking cars at a parking lot for the fair. They have like 3 events, we park a bunch of cars, $5 a car, yay us. We mostly run that with all volunteers. That's handy because then when things like a thunderstorm break out in the open field, we don't have to close up shop. We can continue to park cars because the thunder and lightning, I'm a volunteer, I've assumed the risk. They call a liability waiver for me. If I get electrocuted, my widow gets the insurance, my body gets disposed at sea, and that's it. There's no lawsuit against the American Legion Post in Dixon because I'm a volunteer, right? What if I'm an employee? What if I got hired to go stand out in the parking lot? Well, then if we start hearing thunder and lightning and somebody gets hurt, now all of a sudden you, as the employer, are legally responsible for the consequences that happen to that person. How many of you, when you brought on an employee to work at your post hall, thought everything from the minute they get on the parking lot is now a source of potential legal liability to this post as this person walks from their car into our building, does what they need to do in our building, and then leave. Every single day, every single step they take, every room they enter, every place they're at. Do you think about that? No? Well, congratulations. You're like 98% of every employer everywhere. And there are lawyers who build very nice houses and have very nice boats because they sue employers just like you all the time for every one of those problems. What about when you have served drinks and beverages? Obviously, you say we have a rule like we can't serve you when you're obviously intoxicated. We're not going to, if you're drunk, we ain't serving you anymore. But do you always know when someone's drunk? How many of you have shipmates who can get across the brow after Liberty completely stone cold drunk, but because they've been in the Navy they can do this, they can do this, permission to come aboard, sir? And they can stride on just fine, and you know they are blotto. They are doing this purely on muscle memory. Okay, those people are among us today. Every one of those people who did Liberty in Olongapo and is now retired in Crossville, that liver still does the same thing. The body, the brain, they all think, I'm good, man, I'm good. I've gone to work and pulled 2 shifts after this. They aren't good. And when they get on the road and they fall off the sidewalk-free street and crash their car or hit somebody else, you know who the lawyers are going to look to sue? Not the Navy veteran who has no money and lives in a mobile home and has been living down there because he's 100% disabled. No, they're going to go for the American Legion. Because the American Legion goes to the White House. Our national commander has met the president multiple times. They think we got money. I sat in on our finance committee yesterday. I'll tell you, we ain't got money. We got enough money to do this. We ain't got enough money to pay for somebody's widow, somebody's dead relative. We don't have it. I'm willing to bet none of the posts out there do either. So if you serve alcohol, you have a heightened responsibility to the public. But your employees can equally get drunk at work and then get in an accident. And then not only are you liable for the alcohol they consumed, you're liable for them because they're doing it in the course of their employment. So your legal duties are extensive. So extensive I needed 2 slides just to tell you this. Legal duties, page 1, wage and hour compliance. Almost all of you have post-insurance, post-liability insurance, and I have heard a number of very wise C lawyers tell me that because the Post has insurance, if we get a wage and hour lawsuit, we're covered. And I trusted those C lawyers because I'm a younger veteran. It might not look like it. My hair's white. I'm bald now. I'm 52. But in the American Legion, as you know, 52 makes you a young legionnaire, right?
Yeah.
So I've heard from a number of sage legionnaires who have fought wars and won medals for valor. I'm just a staff corps weenie who's been in Tennessee for 6 years. What do I know? Oh, don't worry about that, Matt. We've got liability insurance. Did you know that most business liability insurance policies specifically exclude wage and hour lawsuits? That if you don't get the wage and hour rider, if you don't get, it's called the Employment Practices Liability Insurance, wage and hour endorsement, or get a standalone policy. If you don't do those 2 things, your wage and hour compliance cases will be paid for by the Post completely. And that includes double damages for any wages that weren't paid, plus attorney's fees. I don't know about you, but I really hate it when somebody who has worked and sweat and suffered to get the money that they have to go hand it over to a lawyer who just had to go show up in court and say, "Good morning, Your Honor, my name is Matt Broman, I'm here on behalf of the plaintiffs. They didn't pay my clients, can I please have $1,000 too?" And the judge will give it to him. Give it to him. So, wage and hour compliance. If you don't know what it is, you're in the right place. We're going to talk about it more. But even if you know what it is, I need you to go back to your Post and look at your liability insurance policy to see if you have the wage and hour liability rider included or if you have the standalone policy. Because if you do and you get sued for that, your insurance company will pay for it. They'll hire the lawyer. They'll deal with it. That's good. It's bad if you have to pay for it yourself. Workplace safety. In Tennessee, that's covered as TOSHA, the Tennessee Occupational Safety and Hazard Administration. TOSHA is full of a lot of stuff that anyone who's ever been an NCO would consider common sense, and anyone who's ever been a junior sailor would consider, what? Huh? And anyone who's ever been an officer will stumble across and say, wow, somebody really ought to do something like that. I hurt my foot because there wasn't a rail. We should get a rail up there. And the chief then will nod and say, yes, LT, yeah, we should have a rail, shouldn't we? Page 2, anti-discrimination and harassment. This is one of my favorites as a lawyer because you know what is discriminatory and harassing right now in America in 2026? Anybody have a clue? Everything. That's a good guess because in truth, whether something is discriminating and harassing is in the eye of the person who feels harassed and discriminated against. I am a 2-meter tall white guy. In a lot of environments, people act like you're the man. You can't be discriminated against. It can't happen. You know what happens every time I get on an airplane? I feel discriminated against. I'm not obese, but my hips barely fit in the seat. I'm not freakishly tall, I think. Like, I've got relatives who are my height. But I gotta bend over and I bump my head on every overhead luggage compartment all the time, and I have no control over how tall I am. How dare the airline discriminate against me by making their seats to fit the Lilliputians that we have to live amongst? Now, that's discrimination, and potentially someday I'd be able to act like it's worth suing over. But what at minimum I could do is I can say, well, but Matt, you're not part of a protected class. Because the law recognized that everybody can feel discriminated against. I'm left-handed, red-haired, and tall. I feel discriminated against every time someone gives me scissors, moves me in a confined space, or asks me to fit into a sports car. but I'm not protected. The protected classes are, what's your national origin? And by national origin, what they really mean is, were you born anywhere but the United States? If you were, and you feel discriminated against, you got the first part of a case. Sex, and what they really mean is, if you're not a man, you can feel discriminated against and we'll care. We won't care as much as we would care if you were born from somewhere else, but we will care a little bit. It's called heightened scrutiny, not strict scrutiny. Heightened, because apparently women are oppressed a little bit less than people from other countries. I don't know where they get that from, but that's the way the rule is. Sexual orientation, religion. Anybody alive in 2020? Remember how in 2020 we suddenly acted like the First Amendment right to practice religion was something that was compromised in the interest of the public health? Well, the lawsuits about the free exercise of religion are only now starting to trickle up, and it turns out that you probably can't discriminate against people by telling them they can't go to their place of worship, even in the event that you're really, really convinced that the bug is going to kill us all. But that's because it's covered in anti-discrimination. Harassment. Harassment is even more fun because harassment starts with, did I feel uncomfortable? If I felt uncomfortable and it persisted, I persistently felt uncomfortable, then I could qualify it as being harassment. Now, if you're an employer, you then have to deal with, is my workplace harassing? I don't know about you, but in my work with veterans, I've noticed that certain members of the veteran community tend to use language that is a little bit more coarse than I would find at certain very large corporations. Like when I've gone to do a training at Amazon, and I mentioned that veterans tend to be comfortable with a certain degree of profanity, just mentioning the word profanity caused the Amazon executives in the room to gasp with the horror that I might give an example of a profane word in a room full of Amazon employees, because that could create a hostile workforce for Amazon. And as we know, Jeff Bezos needs the money to fly his not at all looking like a phallus rocket up into space with his not at all looking like a call girl wife to go up into space for 35 seconds and act like they're superstars, right? It's Apollo 13 every time Jeff Bezos launches the phallus rocket. He doesn't want that to be compromised by a lawsuit of anyone feeling harassed by the lawyer who stood up and said profanity can create a hostile work environment. But it can. So what do we do as an American Legion post that has employees to make sure that our employees do not feel like this is a hostile work environment? Anyone got a clue?
Training and enforcement.
Training on what?
Boundaries.
Train the members to respect certain boundaries, right? Okay. But I thought we just had a training on how we're supposed to be a welcoming operation, how we're supposed to bring new veterans in. And I don't know about you, but I haven't noticed that the new veterans are any less profane and coarse. In fact, one of the new veteran organizations I'm active with is called the Irreverent Warriors. And the Irreverent Warriors intentionally get very, very outrageously raucous in public wearing our old PT gear shorts, and they act like drunken fools out in public because it's a way to decrease the stress and reduce the amount of trauma people feel and make them feel like you're okay, however jacked up you are, you're okay, right? So if those are the veterans we're drawing from, and we are, how then do you do training and enforcement when not everybody has a 1950s starch suit sense of, good morning, good sir, how are you? Would you like some tea this morning? Right? That's not the way we talk to each other. What do you do? That's a good idea, and it's one that most lawyers would tell you to run with. I just don't know that with our population it's ever going to take. Because the more we do that, the more we look like we're a stuffy, stuck-up organization that doesn't want people to be real. And in 2026, what I keep hearing is everybody wants authenticity. They want you to be who you are. Like, part of the reason President Trump won a second term is because people thought his delivery and his rambling style was him being authentic. Maybe not completely honest, but authentic. I hear authentic a lot when people talk about Trump, even if they don't think that his words are necessarily the verifiable truth. They think he's telling you what he really thinks. That helps him. So what do we do to protect our posts against claims of harassment and a hostile work environment? Any other thoughts? Sir?
I know one thing that I do, we got one male employee and several female employees. And anytime there's a disciplinary problem or anything, I always make sure, especially if it's female, I have one of my female officers with us.
Right.
In the office. That way there's no, you can't say so-and-so said this or
So-
whatever.
so the mic-
handled appropriately.
Right.
By the rules and everything.
So what he's proposing is what I call the Mike Pence solution, right? Everybody remember Vice President Mike Pence, devout Christian, very convinced that he wanted to never involve himself in a sex scandal, and so as a result, he would never put himself in a closed room with a woman, without another woman there, without his wife there, ideally, right? That was how Vice President Pence operated. And that will work, but it also makes everything slow and cumbersome. And a lot of the times when you're doing employment supervision, if you wait to do a counseling, then the problem can start to look like you're tolerating it instead of addressing it. So there's no 100% solution, but here is my suggestion. When you onboard an employee, have that employee participate in a long interview where you take notes, where you prepare a statement, where you talk about what are your boundaries, what are your expectations in the workplace, what do you as an individual need in order to feel respected and safe in the work environment you're in. And then when you do your annual reviews, and you're all doing annual reviews with all your employees, right? And in your annual reviews with your employees, you're all doing a written up report that you're having the employees sign and you're putting it in their file, right? Right? Because when the Navy, we would do fit reps twice a year. I'm only asking you to do it once a year. And I'm asking you to do it once a year not to make the Navy happy, because in the Navy that was how they would decide who gets promoted and who doesn't, because they don't want to actually have to pay attention to what kind of an officer you are. They just like to look at your file and say, well, how's he looking in his uniform? Is he all fives? Does he get 5 buttons? Fine, we'll promote him. We're not doing it for that. We're doing it so that when this employee turns sour on you, and you have to expect that they all will, you might love them. They might be your daughter-in-law. They might be your nephew. You have to assume they will go sour on you at some point. When they do, the first thing your lawyer is going to ask for is their employment record. What's in their file? How many times have you talked with them? What did you go over with them? When did you counsel them? What were their expectations? And if you do a pre-employment conversation where you establish that this particular individual is okay with a salty amount of profanity, is okay with nicknames that might be crude or otherwise demeaning, right? Like, I can't tell you some of the nicknames I had when I was a JAG Corps officer because they're truly not appropriate for me to say in front of a group of people. But the Navy expected me, and they burned this into me at OIS, if you get a nickname, you embrace it, because you embracing that nickname makes you part of our community. And the number one problem you have because of the mill rind on your collar, for those of you who are in the Army, in the Navy, they put a special bus pin on us to make sure that nobody confuses us for a real officer. They give us a little logo that says, don't trust me with weapons or authority. And we wear it on our left collar so you can see it. The right collar has the rank, and then you ignore that and you just think about he's on the short bus. Okay. When they put the mill rind on me, they said, that marks you out as the other. Even though you wear the same uniform, every sailor you ever run into is going to think you're there to get them thrown out of the Navy. And you need to be able to be one of them. And if they give you a nickname, you take it and you embrace it and you run with it. That's true for our workforce too, except for the fact that everybody who works for us hasn't signed an enlistment contract. They're not an obligated officer. They can quit anytime and they can sue you when they quit. You can't sue the Navy for all the things they did to you. So, pre-employment interview, regular annual discussions where you go over those things. Hey, I noticed that 3 weeks ago, one of our patrons asked you for your phone number. Did that make you feel uncomfortable? If so, what do you need me to do to support you in handling that? Right? Bartender sexual harassment by members of the Post when the Post is the employer, that'll turn into a lawsuit against the Post. That member might not be part of the executive committee. That member might have no authority whatsoever, but that member is a part of the corporate entity that is the employer. That could turn into a workplace sexual harassment lawsuit like that. Employment verification. This one is pretty easy. Most of us have the habit of getting citizenship and employment verification documents together. What you don't tend to do is keep them. A lot of times they'll get lost. A lot of times when adjutants are adjutants for like 20 years, when they leave, their filing system isn't turned over. So for this one, for the employment verification, my advice is simply this. Anytime you have an adjutant who's been an adjutant for more than 10 years, get them an assistant adjutant. Don't screw around with this, because you never know when a stroke, a heart attack, or a divorce is going to take somebody completely out of your world, and when they're gone, if they've been doing the job for more than 10 years, you're in a disaster. More posts lose their charters over bad transitions in the adjutant position, bad record keeping, than any other factor. A whole lot of juvenile stupidity doesn't close posts as fast as we lost our records and we didn't know what to do, and we didn't send our dues, and we didn't pay our mortgage, and we didn't pay our utility bill, and now we're bankrupt. Assistant adjutant will help with the employment verification. The last one is the posted notices. And this is one where I know lawyers are just doing this to create opportunities for other lawyers to sue people. That poster, you see it in near every bathroom of every restaurant you ever go to. It's a wall of text. You have the right to breaks. You have the right to sue if you get hurt. All of those need to be put on a poster and put up somewhere at your post. If you can't think at your post of where it is, when you go home, I need you to do a perimeter search. I need you to find it. If you can't find it, I need you to get it put up there. You can download it for free. You can print it on regular paper. You can also buy for it to be laminated and do it once every 5 years or so. But you got to have it posted. If you don't have it posted, some lawyer can sue you for that alone. Failing to post required notices can turn into like a $5,000 fine. That sucks. All right, you have all of those covered. How many posts of the areas I just covered in the legal areas, how many of you have all of those locked down 5x5? You're good. Okay, good.
Where do you download that?
The Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. And the link is also in one of these slides as we go along later. But a lot of this stuff you get from the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Okay, wage and hour compliance. If you see this slide, you will notice there is a wall of text on it. If you're a Navy veteran, you are used very much to having someone stand at the front of the room and read through every word on this wall of text. Right? Okay. I have suffered to death by PowerPoint as well.
Thank you.
I'm not going to do this for you. This is why I asked Mike to make sure I printed this out for you, so that you can read on your own. Is there anyone in the room who is not functionally literate? Okay.
We are here.
Because you are all functionally literate, I am going to pay you the respect of not going over this in gruesome detail. I'm going to caveat out of this the number one area where wage and hour compliance is a problem for American Legion posts. And this is it. You give somebody a job. That job involves making sure something at the post is ready to operate when you open up for something. Bake sale, car show, a day in the life of the canteen, the restaurant, right? If you have the restaurant, someone's got to get the food, someone's got to get the supplies, someone's got to make sure we have enough beer, someone's got to make sure we have enough Diet Coke in case the president comes by, right? Okay. You send your employee to go get that stuff. While that employee is out getting that stuff, are you paying them as if they were at work? Yes or no?
Yes.
Anyone think no? Anyone tell their employees something like, you clock in when you get to the post, just get the stuff you need before you come to the post? Anybody heard that? I've heard that 6 times this year. And I'm just the lawyer they call when the thing's gotten so bad that they think they got to go to court. So if I heard it 6 times from real posts, my bet is there are at least 30 posts that say stuff like that to folks all the time. Now, as a volunteer, when we're doing parking lot stuff in Dixon, if my commander says, hey, Matt, can you grab a table and the banner before you get to the parking lot? My answer is, of course, fine. I'm on my way to going to the parking lot anyway. I can pick up the stuff, fine, no big deal. but I'm not getting paid. The problem is, does my commander recognize the difference between Matt Broman, member volunteer, and Trini Lopez, bartender employee? And a lot of the time the answer is no. Because the post commander is just thinking, I have a mission, I need to accomplish the mission, I need to get the mission done, because that's what the military trained us to do. I have a problem, these are my resources, I apply my resources to my problem solved, move on to the next thing, right? That's our mindset. But with an employee, you always have to say, the minute I give a tasking, I have put that employee on the clock. The minute I give a task, I am acting as a supervisor, and the work that I am telling them to do, I need to make sure they're getting paid for. And if you screw it up, it can turn into a wage and hour lawsuit for unpaid wages for years. Because if you screw it up once, you're likely to screw it up again and again and again and do it again and routinely. Especially because most of our posts only have 1 or 2 employees, so we start to think of them like family. We start thinking of them like, they're just like us. They're doing this because they love the Legion. They might love the Legion, but they also love getting paid. And when they get fired, there's a lawyer who's going to say, I don't care how much you love them. They didn't love you enough to keep you on staff. They fired you. Let's get those rat bastards. And we can be persuasive as lawyers when we tell them that, because we offer them money. Have you paid off your car yet? No. Would you like to pay off your car? Yes. How about I go sue the former employer for $15,000 and then you pay off your car? Ooh, that sounds nice. They suck. They let you go after you gave them 10 years. You worked on Christmas? Yes. You worked in the storm? Yes. You helped them? You dealt with all their sad, sorry war stories, all the trauma. You dealt with the crazy people? Yes. I think they owe you a car for what they made you do without getting paid, don't you? Well, now that you put it that way, yeah, they do. You got to look at what your employees are being asked to do, and if they're being asked to do it as related in any way, shape, or form to their job, you better be paying them for it. And you better have someone paying attention to that. And it better not be your bar manager, because your bar manager tends to have the same attitude the commander does, which is problem, solution, done. I'm talking about someone who is neurotic, someone who is high anxiety, someone who's a stress monkey, right? If we were in the fleet, I would say you need like a yeoman to deal with this. Someone who lives to make sure that every I has a dot, every T has been crossed, right? If it was in the Marine Corps, I would say it's the ordnancemen, right? Like the people who are in charge of stacking the shells to make sure you can stack bodies downfield. How many shells do I have? Do I have enough? No, I don't have enough. I need more. That's the person you need to be looking over your employer books. And they need to be trusted to let their neurosis run free. I mean, unleash the hounds. Let them be crazy neurotic and then come back to the executive committee. Maybe you take time and write it down in a written report, but be thorough, because the more thorough they are, the less you're going to get shot up and land on flames because you weren't paying attention to what was behind you. Okay. Workplace safety. This is the next one. Workplace safety really boils down to find the most tender, fragile, delicate person in your post you can, and then have them go around the post and look at everything they think could hurt them. Is the floor slippery? Okay, we need to change the polish on the floor. Is that outlet uncovered? Oh my gosh, we gotta wall that off. Is there a short circuit somewhere? We gotta deal with that. Has the women's bathroom especially? I've noticed this. Slip and falls tend to happen more for women than for men. I don't know. I have no theory as to why that is, but it happens more. If the floor in the women's bathroom is not level, you are going to have a lawsuit for it at some point. Level it. If there isn't appropriate ventilation in the kitchen and in the bathrooms, you are going to have a lawsuit from it eventually. If your hall smells like paint, somebody is going to claim it's a toxic fume. If you invite the public in, if you rent out your hall for weddings or gatherings, you need to let that fragile person walk around and identify things for you regularly. If you don't have anyone who suits that definition, and you don't have a member who is a rental landlord or owns or manages an apartment building, Go to an apartment building in your town. Ask one of the people who do the walkthroughs when new residents come through to just come over, buy them lunch, and say, look, I just need to borrow your eyes for half an hour. Bring your clipboard, write down everything you see that you would ding somebody's security deposit for. Right? That's something that an apartment manager will know. What would you take money out of a security deposit for? Write it down, and then that becomes your work list of things to solve. That will get you through most things. The other thing that's a real challenge for TOSHA, and that's the Tennessee Occupational Safety Hazard Administration, is incident reporting deadlines. Most of our posts are not telling their employees, if you get hurt, no matter how small, I need to know about it quickly so that we can document it. Because if someone cuts their hand and doesn't report it and it doesn't get documented and later it gets infected, that turns into a lawsuit against the post. Every place I've ever been in where there's food prep, you're going to have little accidents happen. I had a friend of mine broke his neck. A big thing fell on his neck and he broke it. And his employers are trying to soft shoe the reporting requirements to keep from making an insurance claim. The dude's got a broken neck. They're going to get hosed for $500,000 by the time it's done. I'm trying to convince him to let my law firm handle it because I'd like to get 30% of $500,000. Don't make your post into that restaurant. The reporting requirements are very strict. Any fatality must be reported within 8 hours. Anything that requires hospitalization or an amputation requires to be reported within 24 hours. Loss of an eye also counts as that. We don't have a lot of that, but I need you to pay attention to, like, anything that's at all serious, we got to report pretty quickly. Questions about workplace safety? Yes, sir.
It's about safety. You can go to your local fire department.
Mm-hmm.
Your local fire department has a code and they have an inspection checklist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Be careful what you ask for. It's costing us some money to comply. Not only that, but he brought along his buddy from the board of compliance. Brought along his buddy. Now he has his own interpretation of what the rule is. And even though you can read the words, that's not interpretation. It's his interpretation that counts. So along that whole scheme of things is some repairs that need to be done.
Yes.
We never appeared to be before, but now they are. The other thing is that Tennessee has a code book. Okay, it's 2023. Okay, your county has a code book that might be 2019 or it could be 2025, and perhaps the city that you're within, they have updated theirs, and none of the three necessarily read the same, and they're not the same within the 99 counties in Tennessee.
Right.
So you really have to, take the risk and get a fire inspector and get your local ordinance guy to come in and take a look.
Or be a little sneaky and recruit a firefighter into the post, and then have the firefighter help you as a member of the post. Right? Like, recruiting isn't just about keeping nationals happy on numbers, it's about adding resources to your team. A lot of firefighters are veterans. There are a lot of firefighters. And if you were to bring one in and glaze him up about how awesome it is that he knows how to make this post safer and better, you've got a member for life, because he'll feel like you trust his expertise. And who in this room doesn't like feeling trusted as an expert? Right? We all do. And in this case, you can really save your post hundreds of thousands of dollars by just having somebody do a walk around and point out things and then going after it in an orderly fashion. Yes, sir, Mr. Ferris.
I know one thing we do that when we recruit a new member, sons, legionnaire, whatever, one of the first things we ask them, what do you do for a living?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they're a plumber, when we need something, you might help them around the post, for plumbing. We got firefighters, we got people that are OSHA certified that works for DEA, that's able to come through and walk through the post.
Now, as the lawyer, I will tell you, that's awesome. Just also make sure that whoever gives you that advice and designs the program, you write down in somewhere in the adjutant's record, Plumber Wisniewski on 27 July 26 did a walkthrough and identified these three things. Keep the record of who, when, and where. The logbook that we were trained to keep when you were standing sentry or when you were the OOD, like, that's really important in the post too. I have been to 27 posts in my time as a judge advocate. Do you know how many posts had a logbook of the operations in the post building? None. None. You know how many trained logbook keepers I have found at the posts I visited? I found 3 at every single one. Because even if you didn't make it to sergeant, at some point you had to stand duty at a post and log in, right? The general orders of standing watch are general orders almost everybody knows, no matter what their job was, because they had to do it, because it's one of the things we're indoctrinated to do. Why, when we become legionnaires, do we think, I know why, because we hated doing it when we were in uniform. We thought it was dumb then. I'm here to tell you, it is dumb and it's essential. I can look and see what happened every single day of the USS Duluth's life because I can look at the book. When I go to visit the post in Crossville and I want to know what's happened at the Crossville post for the last year, they've got to run and hunt and dig and find up some guy who can walk me through most of what's happened in the last year. It's terrible. A logbook kept by a responsible officer for every day would be the world's greatest asset. When I was doing courts martial, the logbook of every duty station was absolutely an exhibit in every court martial I had where anything happened on board the installation. Help yourself. Buy the $2 book. Have somebody start it when they open the building. Have somebody sign it when they lock the building up for the night. Have them write down what happened over the course of the day. Every day. It'll feel dumb, but you know what it'll also feel? Familiar. It'll feel familiar. Has anybody ever written in a logbook for, yeah. You all know what I'm talking about, right? It takes you about 3 minutes. Nothing happened today. Closed up at 2000. Yay. Good. I now have a document that shows me no one was injured on this site at this time for Tennessee OSHA requirements. No one was hurt at the post this day. Yes, sir.
Reporting also, not only for employees, but would include if something happened to someone at the
Yes.
post.
Yes. Although that, since I'm focusing just on TOSHA, which is all about employee safety, but yes, your general liability, your premises liability, if you're letting people in and out of your post for whatever, yeah, injuries you want to be able to document. You want to identify witnesses, you want to identify the time, you want to identify the place. We all have cars. We've all been in a car accident at some point in our life. Every single one of you who's ever been in a car accident has heard your insurance agent tell you something like, take pictures, write down details. Was it clear? Was it wet? Was it dirty? Were there traffic? What other cars were present? What officer did you see, right? That's all because lawyers need it as a substitute for the memory that you're absolutely going to forget as time goes by. Okay, next, employment verification. This one used to be fairly simple. It's now gotten a little more complicated. When you bring in an employee, I want you to look specifically for Real ID certification on their driver's license. If they don't have Real ID certification, I need you to get familiar with all of the other things that you can use for employment verification. When you bring an employee on, you got to photocopy it, you got to put it in their file. This is not one where I have a trick to make life easier. This is just bureaucratic stupid. You got to do it. If you don't do it, at some point, the government's going to get around to suing employers who have people who work for them who are not legally authorized to work for them. Additionally, if you have an undocumented employee, while the government may never come for you, if you ever have to fire that employee will then use the fact that you let them work when they didn't have the right to turn into a discrimination lawsuit on the basis of national origin. You oppressed me as a worker because you knew I wasn't legally authorized to work here. You made me work unpaid overtime because you knew I was a refugee from El Salvador. Ain't lawyers great? Oh, okay. Mandatory posting and notification. This is an example of the kind of big, ugly banner poster you can put. Once you put it up there, just make sure you update it every 2 or 3 years. You don't need to be familiar with it. You don't need to understand everything that's on there. I don't even understand everything that's on there, but you need to post it. If you don't have it posted, you can get sued. Okay. What are the opportunities that you have to survive being an employer? Number one, never assume common sense. There are two reasons for this. Number one, what you think is common sense and what someone else thinks is common sense is not the same. Okay? I, myself, think that it is absolute common sense for anyone who has children to have life insurance and to have a will that establishes who will be responsible for your children in the event of your death. To me, that is common sense. I have two brothers. Neither one of my brothers has either life insurance or a will because they both assume I'm going to live forever. One of my brothers served in the Army. He runs like 30 miles a day. He's fit. Death isn't going to come for me, even though no man in my family has lived past 71 in 5 generations. The Reaper will not find him. My other brother has 4 children with 3 different mothers, and he's convinced that he doesn't need to do anything to provide for them because their moms are taking care of them. I work in child abuse law in Dixon County, and I will tell you the world is full of mothers who are terrible at being mothers. And even if you think that you get to opt out because you're the optional bonus parent because all you contributed was either an X or a Y chromosome, you're wrong. Your child is your legacy and you need to provide for them. But this is common sense to me, Matt Broman, lawyer who's done family law and seen death and buried neighbors, and right? My friend who's an electrician, when he was talking to me about rewiring the house, he thought that a number of things that he would do as common sense were just, everybody knows this. None of what he told me about how electricity flows or doesn't flow or what you use to stop it from flowing, stuff I knew. I have a high school diploma, I have a college degree, I have a law degree, I've been an officer in the Navy, I'm an officer of the court. Nowhere along the line did they teach me about how electricity can flow or be stopped. I would bet that if I were to go around this room, most of you have some field of expertise where doing what you do, you have encountered a member of the general public who has come to you and said they did something in your field of expertise, and you're like, what? How dumb are you? How is it possible that you operate as an adult human being and have done this thing in this area? And the answer is, well, you don't know. Most of us barely get by on what we're almost competent in, and the rest of life, we just kind of hope the world doesn't punish us for our incompetence all the time. So never assume common sense. Next, I need you to over-explain your work processes. If you say something like, after the customer leaves the table, I just need you to clean up the table. Different people have a different idea of what clean is. And you're going to end up with a frustrated employee, a frustrated customer, a disgruntled member, or a pissed off manager. If you didn't say, for us, clean means all the linens get put in the dirty hamper. Nothing gets recycled. It means the table not only gets wiped down, but gets dried off. It means the floor gets swept up. I don't know how hospital clean you get, but however it is, I need you to over-explain it. Because then, if you've over-explained it and you make it the habit to over-explain it, you have what I consider to be a legally definable habit. And one of the elements of hearsay in lawsuits, I either have to have the person who said a thing come talk about it, or I have to have someone who heard them say it talk about it. But to have someone who heard about it talk about it, I have to be able to say there's an exception to hearsay, which habit qualifies as. So if you've been the post adjutant for 15 years and you've hired 15 people, and then your 15 people, you walk them through the exact same process every time, that exact same process can be put into evidence as your habit. But if you don't get in the habit of over-explaining everything, then you won't have a habit that I can introduce for you. Record keeping, everybody hates it, but you got to do it. Please, oh please do it. Your lawyer will thank you if you do it. And your successors in office will actually thank you if you do it. When we were in the prior training, we were listening to a new district commander talking about how there were a number of posts he didn't even know how to get a hold of. We've heard that, right?
Yeah.
How many of you were in the room for the prior training and heard that? Okay. When I became judge advocate of this department 4 years ago now, the prior judge, I'd never met the prior judge advocate. I've never had a conversation with him. Before I became a departmental judge advocate, I had never spoken with a departmental judge advocate about what this job is. I spent my first 2 years as your department judge advocate basically trying to figure out what do you need from me? How do I help you? Because there was no turnover. Now I want you to think back to your first job in the military. Right after you finished basic school, whatever your basic training was, right after you finished your A school, this is how you do aviation mechanics work. When you gave me your first post, was there someone there who said, you are now the ordnance man for VMF 132, this is where we keep the bombs, this is where we keep the triggers, your job is to put the trigger together with the bomb and put it together on the plane, this is how we do it, this is where you go for chow, this is where your barracks are, this is where the clinic is. We had somebody who did that, right? Okay, in the Navy we call it onboarding because we have a fancy, we do everything like we pretend we're at sea all the time. What does the Army call it when you get that talk?
Orientation.
Orientation. Makes sense because that's kind of like map orienteering, and Army people get lost in the wilderness all the time and need to know how to get to where they're going. Yeah. Orientation, onboarding. When you took on your job at the post, did you get an orientation or an onboarding from the person who had the job that you were then taking over? No. And so what that meant was, the only way for you to know what had been done in your job before you is if there was a written record somewhere that logged out everything that had been done. So maybe your adjutant keeps good minutes of your posts and your post-executive committee, and maybe you can read through those. But if each one of us in our jobs kept a logbook of what did I do today as chaplain for Post 207, I went to these 3 veterans' homes, we buried this service member, I got a call from this guy who's going through a divorce, and this is what I counseled him and I spent time with him. When that chaplain steps down and that book gets handed off, the new chaplain will know, okay, in this post, this is the kind of expectation they have of the chaplain. I can exceed it, I can be less than that, I can do different than that, but at least I know what the baseline is. If you don't keep written records, especially as an employer, especially as the person who's in charge of who gets paid when for what, you will have a disaster. And I don't need it to be formal. I don't need it to have a form. I don't need you to report it to the department or to the night. I need you to do it and make sure that someone else in your executive committee knows where you keep it. Okay? Because if you do that, then when you're gone, someone else can pick it up and either redo it, renew it, adjust it, but continue it. It needs to be part of our culture. In the same way that when you stand a watch, there's a culture of a logbook that you keep for what happens at that watch post. Oh, 6-month reviews. Everything in the post happens on an annual calendar. Like everything we do is sort of driven by the fact that we have the departmental meeting in June, so everything at the post has to turn over in May so we can be ready to show up in June and do what we got to do here in June. I don't know if you know that about why you have elections when you do, but it's because of that. It's so that you can have the appropriate delegates with the appropriate commander here to find out what the department wants you to do. And the national organization meets in July for the same reason, because all the departments have to have their meetings in June. But if you think about it, most of the problems that happen in any workplace you're in sort of happen on about a 6-month cycle. Someone comes in and they are awesome and they can shine you on for like 2 months, but right around 90 days, whoever they really are will show up and you'll notice. And right around 5 months, if their real personality sucks, somebody's going to start to get hacked off and need to do something about it. So if you have a review at 6 months, then you have a chance to provide corrective guidance or terminate. We got to go one road or another because this needs to be awesome. My post needs to be an awesome place for veterans to be. You're either going to shape up, or you're going to ship out. 6 months. My suggestion is you do this review every 6 months. And the last thing I said on the opportunity side of things, when you're an employer, never expect the benefit of the doubt. A lot of us go through life, especially as members of the Legion, thinking that when people say thank you for your service, that means they're going to give us some consideration, some extra kindness because we volunteer to do something a lot of people don't. But when you're an employer, you don't get the benefit of the doubt. The assumption is you got all the money, you got all the power, you made all the rules, so whatever you did, must stick it to you. Judges love to stand up for the poor, oppressed minimum wage employee. Even if that minimum wage employee didn't show up for work, showed up to work drunk, showed up for work half naked, showed up for work high as a kite, yeah, they had a tough day, and you had options. You're the employer. You've got all this money. Document. Show that it's a persistent problem because you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt. Okay. What makes Tennessee quirky? There are things I've told you that would be applicable anywhere in the country. Most of what I've told you is applicable everywhere in the country. So this slide is just about what it is in Tennessee. You do not have individual liability for harassment or discrimination when you're working as an employer. On the other hand, no individual has liability for harassment or discrimination. So let's say you happen to have an incredibly awful, terrible, misogynist rat who also happens to be your bar manager. We'll call him Trevor. If anyone's named Trevor, please, I don't have anything against people named Trevor. I've just had 3 lawsuits where the most sexist pigs I've had to deal with have all been named Trevor. So let's assume that by accident or fatality, Trevor ends up being in charge of the bar manager. And Trevor can't keep his hands off the hind end of every female employee that you have at the post. And the commander has gone over to Trevor and said, Trevor, look, we need you to keep your paws off the workers. You can't be doing that. Trevor's like, oh really? Okay, that's fine. Next thing you know, Trevor's still smacking butts. So the employees get together, they have a day, and they say, I really don't like it when Trevor grabs my butt. I just don't. I'm only making $8 an hour, and I'm getting $20 in tips, and no, I don't like that. We should go see a lawyer. Let's sue him. So they sue, and they're like, well, who is the manager? Trevor. Well, we should sue Trevor. No individual liability for Trevor. We should sue Post 69 because they've got 2 buildings. They've got a nice trust fund. They write $50,000 a year in scholarships, and there are 3 of you. And if I put a $200,000 claim for each of the 3 of you, that's $600,000 in claims. And you know what $600,000 is divided by 3? $200,000. That's $200,000 for me, the lawyer. I would like to get myself a $200,000 boat. So thank you, Trevor. You're going to get me a new boat. And they sue the Post. And because Tennessee law says you can't sue a person individually, you get to sue the institution. Wage theft. You've got to give them 3 hours off paid to go vote if your work schedule on election day does not allow them 3 hours when the polls are open. Have any of you looked through the poll open hours on election day to see if your employees have 3 hours together where the polls are open for them to go vote on election day? Anyone? You did? Awesome.
I'm an elected official. So
There you go. Okay. I did not know this was a law. I have never run into a single employee manual that says on election day, work will stop at, say, 3 p.m. because the polls close at 6 p.m. in our primary business location.
And there's an amendment to that. It has to allow 1 hour after being off in addition to the time for transportation time
To and from. See?
We just shut down our post for the day. That way people who've got to work and our
That's-
meetings are not handled.
So that's a fair solution.
That way they can all go.
But I want you to note it has to be paid time off to work.
Okay.
Paid time off to work. So, pregnancy and maternity leave bonus.
Well, wait.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, jury duty.
Yeah.
So if somebody has jury duty and they have to go to jury duty for a day or 2, whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Their employer's supposed to pay them
Yeah.
their daytime.
Mhm.
I mean, I think my son just got screwed over last year.
Yeah, I listed that on the slide. I didn't mention it here, but you're right. Jury duty is another thing. Tennessee takes doing jury duty very seriously, and when I first became a lawyer in Tennessee, I was surprised to see that when we had jury trials, the court would often keep us going until the middle of the night. Because in California, they close you off at 5. Like the union rules for the bailiffs and the court staff meant that they close the courthouse at 5 o'clock pronto. Tennessee, because of the jury duty pay rule, the courts, which are elected, the judges which are elected, have heard from the employers who have to pay jurors to be there, have said, you gotta get this jury thing done as fast as you can. There are no 2-month trials in Tennessee. We're starting a jury trial this morning. We're gonna be here, if at all possible, till it's done today. So yeah, you gotta pay if they get called for jury duty, you gotta pay for that. Pregnancy maternity leave bonus doesn't really apply to folks who have fewer than 50 employees. I don't know of any post in the state that has more than 50 employees, but if you ever get to where you're really big, just know that at 50 employees, a whole lot of extra things you gotta pay for changes. The last one is really important, the meal break waiver. Generally, you gotta give people a 30-minute meal break if they work 6 or more hours put together. But if you also have food served on site, you can have them sign a waiver of their meal break in order for them to just say, I don't need a meal break, I just want to keep working. The general rule, though, is without a meal break waiver in place, just start looking at your clock, and if I've got anybody there for 6 hours or more, I got to give them 30 minutes off on the clock. That's systemic, that's easy to prove, and you want to make sure you do it. In case of emergency, yes, sir.
Well, kind of along that same line. So you've scheduled Bob to work Monday through Friday, whatever days, and he's scheduled to come in on today to work a 5-hour shift or whatever. However, we realize that something has occurred, that the power's gone out, the water's not flushing or whatever, and so he arrives, and I tell him, I don't need you today.
Yeah.
So I've heard contradictory information that fine, you don't have to pay him for the 5 hours he was scheduled, you don't have to pay him for a minimum of 3 hours. Sorry, Bob, you could have gotten both lawns today, but you're out with that opportunity as well.
Yeah, so this is one where I would strongly suggest having a written employment agreement with your employees. Tennessee law does not require it, but I would strongly encourage you to have that. And one of the provisions that you put in that is that in the event that scheduled work time ends up being canceled due to forces either specifically beyond your control or due to decision of management, you agree that you are not going to be compensated for hours that you were scheduled for but did not work. If you put it in the employment agreement, then the courts will uphold it. If you don't have the employment agreement, I would expect that if it happens regularly and then you fire the employee and then they're arguing over other stuff, they'll throw that in too. I've never seen it be a standalone claim for a lawsuit, but it's often an add-on, right? They'll start with a wage and hour, they'll throw in a little bit of harassment, then they'll throw in a little canceled scheduled work time. Yeah. Sir?
In other words, it's different for employers that has the union representative
Sure.
for them.
Yeah.
Because I know I worked for Goodyear for 20 years, and I did both sides of it.
Yeah.
If we schedule somebody to come in 4 hours early, we have to pay them
Yes.
whether they work or not.
Collective bargaining arrangements are all going to be written. They're all going to be multi-layered and very detailed. And yes, I am assuming that none of our posts are operating in a collective bargaining environment. But if you were, you would absolutely have a written employment agreement, and this would be one of the situations that would be explicitly covered. So if any of you are in that situation, it is even more important that you spend time looking at that agreement. I've done a number of union wage disputes, and yeah, it gets real detailed real fast. Yeah. Most of our posts are dealing with 1 to 4 employees, and it's always an at-will. It's usually a minimum wage plus some tips kind of situation. So it's a whole lot is left open, and that's why I encourage you to put down a written employment agreement that lays out what you expect and what you're prepared to pay for. Yeah. In case of emergency, what do you do if something comes up and you don't know what to do? The answer isn't on my extremely basic slides, and you call me and I'm like, I don't know. First things first. If you document everything, you're going to be better off than if you documented nothing. But that's not going to help you when the emergency has happened, right? But the number one way to reduce the number of emergencies you're going to face is to document everything as you go along. If an emergency happens and you don't have a clue about how to deal with it, you need to have allies. You need to have somebody who knows what the hell they're doing. And this is why my advice in this presentation is make friends with someone who is in HR. Not with someone who is retired and isn't paying attention anymore and maybe used to be a lawyer or used to do like negotiate. No, someone who is in HR in 2026. I don't care if they're a Legionnaire, if they're a member of the auxiliary, if they're some, I don't care. I need you to be their friend because I need them to be willing to help you with their expertise. In the same way we talked about having the firefighter help you walk through your facility, I want you to make an ally of someone whose profession is human resources. Yes, ma'am.
What do you consider an emergency in this case?
Someone slips and falls. Someone is starting to grumble a lot at work and saying, I'm not going to put up a... Someone has an argument about an employment policy decision that's happening at the post. The bar manager and the head bartender are at loggerheads over whether or not you should be open on Friday nights. To me, those are all potential legal emergencies where I would want to have somebody I can pick up the phone with and say, this is what's going on. What do you think I should do next? The number one way to deal with any situation that is conflict headed, it's headed towards a conflict, is triage. How do I remove one element of the fire triangle? Right? Heat is the one that I always focus on when I'm dealing with legal When I see a post's engagement with each other start to become heated, if it's in the employment realm, that's when I want to have someone who's in HR that I can call and say, hey, how do I diffuse this? How do I unpack this? How do I make this so that it's less likely to explode? Because there's always fuel. I've got the money to pay them. And there's always oxygen. There are lawyers willing to take a case and make drama out of it. So in the fire triangle of employer-employee issues, the only one I can really control is the heat. A conflict-free workplace cannot be achieved because you eventually have to have accountability. Right? People will take advantage if you don't hold them accountable. But when I hold them accountable, there's a certain amount of heat that's generated. And when we're dealing with civilians, we cannot expect them to come to a position of attention, take the captain's mast with confidence and calmness and move on. We have to expect that they're going to seek an outlet. I don't want that outlet to be a lawsuit. The last thing I want to tell you is that when you're dealing with life as an employer, you're always going to... Yes, sir?
I got a question. I don't know exactly how you handle it, but in the past, we've had the bartenders get real friendly with the veterans, especially when they don't have no family or nothing, so they become friends with them. And next thing you know, they own the house, they inherit $200,000, and my objective is that's not what you're here for.
Right.
You're here to do a job, and it's our job as officers of the post to make sure that our membership is not being pursued in that way, like a normal person. So how would you write that in a policy, or just a thought?
So my sigh is because there's the ideal world I'd like to live in, and then there's the world I do live in. When I first became a naval officer, the Navy had a very strong policy against fraternization. And the rule was, enlisted officer, you do not hang out together. And the rule was, male, female, you do not become intimate with each other, even if you're both officers, even if you're both enlisted. And the more we integrated the fleet, and the more we put pressure on people in the fleet to go on 9-month deployments, to go on repeated warfare deployments, to deal with divorces and disruptions, the more that fraternization culture broke down in the face of a whole lot of folks saying, how else am I going to manage the stress of doing this job? In the civilian world, it's even worse. In the civilian world, there was never, ever an expectation about fraternization. In the Mad Men TV show, they joked regularly about how the secretaries would come to work in New York in the advertising to find themselves an executive, to marry, quit this job, and just become a rich housewife in Connecticut, right? That was the trope. And the trope existed because it was also a reality in the corporate world. In 2026, we live in a world where men and women work side by side in everything. There's no longer some sort of sexual division in our workforce. And I think that's good, but that's because that's the world I've always lived in, right? My first commanding officer was a woman. The judge who swore me into the bar was a woman. I don't know what it's like to be a lawyer without having women in the bar as well. What it means for you and for your members as Post is that almost automatically there are going to be social mores that exist in the senior leadership of the Post that are different than the social mores of the employees of the Post, because they're going to overwhelmingly be younger, and in the community of people who are coming into the Post. You can have a non-fraternization policy as part of your employment. You can have a rule saying that you agree that you will accept no gift or bequest from any member that you encounter in your employment, and you will disclaim any such gift given. You can do that. You can enforce it up to firing them. Now, after you fired them, is there anything that's going to prevent the veteran from still giving the house over to the bartender? The answer is no. The answer is no, because the American society has decided from, as far as I can tell, the Clinton impeachment on, that whatever happens between two consenting adults is not going to be the business of anyone, with one very important exception. There is the elder abuse statute in Tennessee. There is adult protective services in Tennessee. So, that is a very long-winded wind-up to my advice to you. First, put into your employment agreement exactly as much poking your nose into their personal lives as you feel comfortable dealing with. Understand it will never go over easy. It will always be an uphill battle. You will always catch a lot of flack from it. But at the end of the day, if your integrity as a person feels like I cannot stand by while some 22-year-old bartender fleeces some 85-year-old paraplegic out of their house, then put it in there and go fight that fight. I am not going to tell you to die on a hill of honor that you think is worth dying on. But my second piece of advice is far more pragmatic. Call Adult Protective Services. Call Adult Protective Services and tell them what you see, because they actually have the legal authority to stop it. And all you have the authority to do is fire the employee. I think that in that scenario, it is really, really good to have a documented set of feedback, expectations that you can take to the executive committee, that you can hand over to Adult Protective Services and help them make that investigation. There is no doubt that most of our membership is up above 70 years old. There is no doubt that our membership is subject to a massive amount of scams, theft, con men, and frauds. So I'm all for us protecting our members. But you're going to have a really hard time protecting your members as an employer. You're going to have a much easier time if you pawn it off to the public agency that has the authority to take enforcement action. So, final thoughts on all of this. Number one, make allies. Make allies in all the things you do. Premises, employer relations, legal protection. Make allies. Do not think of it as recruiting members. Think of it as making alliances. When I was in the Navy, I was always happy to have a Marine friend, because the Marine friend knew how to handle both a firearm and their fists. As the Staff Corps weenie, I did not. People would like to pick fights with the tall guy and make them look real good and tough. I needed a short Tasmanian devil friend to go out on liberty with me who could put someone down, right? I'll pick up a bar tab for you, no problem, Norkin. You keep going to the gym, lifting weights, and trying to imagine that man's face is meatloaf. Let's go drinking, Norkin. Number two, document everything. Create a logbook for the post installation itself, and tell whoever's responsible as your day goes through at the post, even if all you do at the post is open up for your meetings, open the post for the meeting, 15 members present, concluded operations at 1900, signed, B.F. Schmuckatelli, Seaman First, right? If that's all it is, it's still a good habit to have. And it will also make us feel like a veterans organization, right? There are only a few things we do that make you feel really like you're still playing Navy or Marine or soldier. We stand up, we salute the flag, right? That's feels good. Logbook. It'll feel good. Your lawyer will love you for it too. And number 3, don't keep anything related to employment secret amongst the bar manager, the commander, and the adjutant. Get it into the department executive committee. Get it, post executive committee. Get it into your e-board, whatever you call it at your post. Get it into that group of 5 to 10 people who are actually responsible, because you never know when a stroke is going to take the one other person that you told everything to. You never know when you need to have somebody step up and step in, and the people who are going to step up and step in are the folks who are at that e-board. Even if they just want to pay the bills and get out of there and get back to the bar, make them spend a few minutes understanding that our bartender, Claudia, is pregnant. She's going to be out for 2 months. We're going to need to bring in a temporary replacement while she's on maternity leave. And that temporary replacement is going to need to be walked through and oriented and protected, because we're putting him in amongst our post full of savages, and that replacement won't know to disregard what Trevor says because he's just a Nimrod, right? We need to make sure that Claudia's temporary replacement is ready to be safe on board the post, because otherwise Claudia's temporary replacement becomes the post's permanent lawsuit hangover, right? Okay. Any suggestions from anyone in the room who's done this employer thing for longer than I have that hasn't been brought up already? Okay. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Could the people that you hire to clean the post or cut the grass or do any of that kind of stuff, could they be considered employees?
Yes. Whether or not someone is an employee or an independent contractor really boils down to a couple of questions. And it is not, what do I want them to be as the employer? Do not think that your desire to have them just be an independent contractor is what makes them an independent contractor. Everyone know the difference between an employee and an independent contractor? I don't want to belabor things I know you already know, so I won't go over it in detail. But if you dictate when they have to work, where they have to work, how they have to do their work, they're an employee. If instead, like the landscaper, for example, if you hire a landscaper and you say, on every Tuesday at 4 o'clock, I need you to cut this grass for 1 hour, and for that I will pay you this much money, you've almost certainly made them an employee. But if you say, I'm going to give you $150 to cut the grass every month, and leave it to that, they're an independent contractor. A whole lot depends on how much control you have over what they do, when they do it, and how they do it.
Where do you have to write that down?
Where do you write that down? I would put it, so if they're an employee, I would recommend having a written employment agreement. If they're an independent contractor, I would recommend having a written contract. Either way, that document I would put into a file that goes into the adjutant's file book. And if you're following what I'm recommending here, in the logbook of the day of the post on April 17th, when you hired Martinez Landscaping to do landscaping, you note, hired Martinez Landscaping as contractor to cut grass twice per week between the months of March and October at this rate. Adjutant Johnson approved, Commander Smith signed off on. This concludes the log entry 1442, Seaman Schmuckatelli, Seaman First Class, right? Okay. Like, you're not gonna go wrong if you create multiple documented records of what happened, especially if it relates to the post premises. The building, if you guys have a building, I need you to think of it like it's your worship. I need you to think of it like it's your fort. You have got to protect your perimeter. You have got to document what happens on board. You have got to make sure that anyone who comes on board can see this is where we're at, in one place. If you don't do that, you're making the job of the next person who has whatever office you have harder. And you're making the job of the lawyer nearly impossible. Because when we're relying on memory, especially memory of people who are dead or who are disgruntled and disconnected from the post, we're doomed. We're in the dark fighting with someone we can't see, with tools we don't know we have. Keep the records. Yes, ma'am?
So in a situation where we have no records, and we're in the employees volunteer / said, I'm an employee, not a volunteer, and the post saying, well, I don't have anything that says you're a volunteer. Where do you start today?
I would say today, so I'm the commander of this hypothetical post today. Today, I have no employees. You'd like to be an employee of the post? That's great. Let's sit down, let's talk about what you would do as an employee, and we'll create an agreement today. I don't know what happened before. I'm not in a position to talk about what happened before, and I'm not going to commit to what happened before. When Joe Biden became president of the United States, you know what happened? The first thing he got done with the swearing in on his desk, ready for him or the auto pen to sign, were about 300 executive orders saying, everything Donald J. Trump did, screw it, we ain't doing it. And when Donald J. Trump came back in, he sat down with his big old Sharpie, and I know he did it by himself because I watched it on live feed, because the dude does everything where you can see it. For 2.5 hours, Donald J. Trump, screw Joe Biden. No, Diet Coke, Donald J. Trump, right? That's, if you come in as a commander and you don't have records of what went before, you need to treat today like the day of creation. There was light, and it was good, and God spake these words. I, the commander, declare this post does this. And it's not perfect, but it will make your lawyer will be able to say, on May 22nd, 2026, Commander Judy came on board, and Commander Judy set all of these things in place, and she discontinued any prior agreements, any prior arrangements. She canceled them all because she's the one who's responsible for the post. And just like Joe Biden didn't want to be responsible for the things he thought Donald Trump did that were wrong, and just like Donald Trump sure didn't want to feel responsible for things that he thought Joe Biden did was wrong, elections have consequences. You've been elected. When in charge, take charge, right? That's a thing I heard from my Marine Corps friends. When in charge, take charge. That's what I would do. I have one other ask of you. I'm the one department judge advocate. Tennessee has 3 grand regions. We have a few posts. A lot of them are in places I haven't been yet. I need help. If your post has an attorney that helps you in whatever informal capacity, I need you to rat them out here. I need you to tell me who they are and how to contact them. Not because I'm going to ask them to take on a position, but because I'm going to ask them, what do you know, and how can you help me be less of a dummy, right? There are lawyers who help our posts who are General Sessions Court judges. There are 2 lawyers who are the judges over veterans treatment courts in our areas. I need to have those contacts. I need you to help me build my network of alliances so that I can do my job for you better. Now, ideally, some of the folks whose names show up on this list will eventually agree to come meet over at department headquarters in August and sit down and talk about, because we're going to develop some sponsorship letters, some liability release letters. I'm going to update the JAG manual for the state, right? There's a lot of things that I've come to know over the course of the last 4 years that we need to do to help posts out. And I want to make sure that it's updated for the 21st century, but I don't want to do it all myself. I'm fundamentally lazy. I'm 52 years old. I can start complaining with some claim of legitimacy, right? Like when I was 30, I couldn't say, oh, I feel so old. But now, there are guys in their 50s who've had surgeries. And I can start whining. But to whine and have it make sense, I gotta have help so I can hand off work after I'm done whining. So if they're not connected with the post formally, I don't mind. Just like if you've got a friend who you've called and asked a question about legal issues for veterans or anything comes up, rat them out here just so that I can send them an email and say, hi, I'm Matt Broman. I'd like to know if you're willing to be involved in a conversation and help, because I need the help, and I've got 5 law students at the Nashville School of Law willing to help me too, but they're just law students. I want to make sure I'm benefiting from some experience as well as some enthusiasm. I really appreciate your time, and I definitely thank you for what you've done for me over the last few years. When you send me questions and problems, they give me an idea about what I need to do. And so these trainings are the side effect of that. So if you got anything out of this training, understand that the only reason this happened is because people just like you sent me messages saying, this is a problem I'm having. So help me help you by continuing to be a raging pain in my rear with your problems. That helps me, because it helps me know what I need to pay attention to help you. Because that's all I'm trying to do, is to be of service to you guys. Thank you for your time and attention, and I hope you have a great connection.